some of you could at least come for this discussion. Some more participants are on the way, given what Delhi is. So we hope that they will join in the next half an hour or so. But without wasting further time, I'm here to give opening remarks and welcome to all of you. All I wanted to say in this brief opening remarks was CSE. We don't need to give you a background of CSE, but the water program, this is one of the important initiatives of the water program. And we have, water program is also one of the oldest CSE programs in the country. And we have tried to address conceptual issues of water-related issues, whether it's lakes and water bodies, circular economy, climate change and water in cities. We have also tried to define the challenges from the perspective of equity and justice and environment. So I think CSE does that well and is acknowledged for bringing both people and environment together in our perspective of looking at issues. So when we do for lakes and water bodies, it's also with that perspective. It's not just about the technology of lake rejuvenation, just the economics and efficiency aspects. We also worked with the government to support the scaling up of initiatives, which we feel is important. And the era of pilot projects is gone. So we are always looking at what lessons can be actually learned to develop a good conceptual understanding, and then what can be actually put into practice how. So CSE's approach has been to fill the gap between knowledge and practice and looking at programs and policies. And that we do through two instruments. One is research and the other is capacity building. So a lot of our water program work is focused on documentation, research, analysis, capacity building, and advising on policy and programs, because that's where the rubber hits the road, as they say. Finally, it has to be implemented. I will let Sushmita to tell you about the book and the compendium. But about the lakes and water bodies, all I wanted to say was it serves very different and complementary purposes. And it is sometimes called green infrastructure and green and blue infrastructure. Sorry, blue infrastructure. But for us, lakes means more than just a blue infrastructure. And the lakes have served various purposes. There was natural lakes, there were man-made lakes, and the lakes for agriculture, and in that sense. Over the time, the lakes have also assumed importance for urban areas. But earlier, they used to be for agriculture, or they were natural lakes like Oxbow lakes, or lakes constructed in Rajasthan and elsewhere to serve a certain purpose. And now we see a very different aspects of lakes, both in the rural and the urban sphere. And when rejuvenation is done, this is just the last point I wanted to make. Rejuvenation is therefore can be done with a different set of priorities. And sometimes they can also be contradictory. So for example, biodiversity is one area, recreation is another, local livelihoods is another, and water supply for decentralized infrastructure, that is also possible through lakes and water bodies. So it's a lot of these variables, and we hope this consultation on this back from brink compendium release will take us forward in our understanding of priorities. And we have Sunita Narayan here, and we look forward to hearing from her the whole issue of climate, water bodies. That's been the focus of how CSE has dealt with this issue. So I would like to ask Sunita to please share her few words, and then we will proceed.
We join Dipender in welcoming all of you to this meeting. I'm very excited about this, I have to say. Um, it's something that we haven't done for a long time, is to look at the success of government programs and looking at exactly how practice is happening. And when Shushmita and I discussed this, Dipender, Shushmita and I particularly was very interested because I think we have reached the time in this country where we need to seriously scale up our work. We are no longer talking about एक pond यहाँ, एक तालाब यहाँ, एक थोड़ा सा इधर काम किया, वहाँ किया. We really have a crisis, an existential crisis that we are dealing with today. And to do that and to deal with it, we need to scale up the work that we have, the programs that we have. And we seriously wanted to understand what is working on the ground. Because it is from what is working that we will be able to draw lessons on what more needs to be done. Why is the practice not getting scaled up? Now, why is this so important? If you take back the history of where we started our work, it's actually now almost 3 decades ago when CSC began its work on water management. And it was always an area where we stumbled. You know, life काफी दफे होता है कि आपने सोच समझ के आप आगे नहीं बढ़े, मगर आपने कुछ देखा और उसको देखने के बाद ऐसी समझ बढ़ी कि you just had to keep working on it. This was in the mid-90s when Anil and I were traveling in different parts of India, and we understood just the diversity of traditional water harvesting systems in the country. And it started off with this trip to Jaisalmer and then a trip to Cherrapunji. A Cherrapunji trip where all of us were told, I mean, I'm old enough to tell you that in school, I think now Cherrapunji is not the wettest place, but when I was growing up, it was the wettest place on earth. And you go to Cherrapunji and there's a big signboard there saying, water is scarce, please use it carefully. You go to Jaisalmer and you find that there has been a civilization that was built up with 50 millimeters of water. On the other hand, it is 500, it is almost a meter of water. So what is the difference? And that is what made us understand more and more how communities across the country in different parts of India living with the ecosystem had built an incredible sophisticated engineering systems which harvested the rain. The principle was simple. You harvest the rain, you recharge the groundwater. Now this was mid-90s. So aap thoda sa sochiye at that time, there wasn't really an understanding of the reason for why we needed to protect our lakes and ponds. At that time, India was talking about canal irrigation. We were talking about irrigation using surface water systems. But when you looked at the data, what also became very clear is that 50% of the country remained rain-fed. In fact, more remains rain-fed even today. And the bulk of irrigation today still comes from groundwater, not from surface water systems. So what we have done over the years has been that the sponges of the country, which would have allowed us to decentralize the recharge, have been destroyed. We have continued to depend on groundwater. Groundwater is now getting more and more unsustainable in its use because we are not recharging it adequately, and we don't recognize this. We don't recognize it because even today, the irrigation bureaucracy calls groundwater as a minor source. And the major source is your canal irrigation. I mean, words are very important because words are ones that actually establish the class or the caste system of water management. And in the caste system of water management, minor irrigation is groundwater. Now, it is that realization that we really needed to increase the ability of this country to harvest water that began the decade of 2000. And it was a good thing that we started Manrega. Manrega's entire effort was to build ecological assets using the labor of people. Now, the unfortunate part with Manrega has been, and that's what another thing that we want to come back to through this work now, is that Manrega scheme has focused on work and not on the asset. So as a result of it, we know the millions of ponds that have been dug. We know the millions of check dams that have been built under Manrega, but we don't know the efficacy of those recharge systems, because the focus is not on the asset. The focus is on the work that is provided. The initial idea of Manrega was that this would not be a permanent program. This would be a program in which you would provide not drought relief, but relief against drought. And as that relief against drought would increase the ability of rural households, villages to improve their water security, you would essentially create a natural capital on which you would be able to improve the well-being of people, withstand droughts that would happen. The last 2 decades, I think, to some extent, and that is why I'm very happy to be with you today. In the last 2 decades, these ideas have grown, but we have not been certain whether the practice has grown or not. So in the last government, the lake programs have been increased. And when you look at this book, which I hope, Shishmita, everybody has a copy of by now, what I find very nice is when Shishmita has put there all the state programs on lakes. Now, if you look at it, this is not small. Every state of India has a separate lake rejuvenation program, and sometimes many programs. And then you have separate programs from the central government as well. You have Amrut as well as a program. Now, the question that we've had is, what is happening with the implementation of these programs? And the reason we feel this is very important is that we are now looking at a time when we cannot afford not to implement. The past 2 decades were decades when, अगर आप सोच लीजिए, अगर कुछ गलतियां भी हो जाती थी या कुछ काम नहीं होता था, so it's okay. I mean, development तो कभी आगे बढ़ता है, कभी पीछे जाता है, कभी आगे आता है, कभी पीछे जाता है. It's okay. That is what a country is about. But today, when you have climate change happening, when you will get more rain in fewer number of rainy days, when you will get a situation where you will need more ability to hold the water on one hand, and you will have longer periods when you do not have water at all, the role of your sponges will become even more important. So the question with lakes initially was irrigation. Before the British came in, before the irrigation department stepped in. Then the idea was not irrigation, it became more beautification. We must have, like Dipender said, it became more for birds and cities and beautifying the lakes. Today, the imperative is to look at lakes once again as a major source of water security. Water security for birds, for biodiversity, and for human beings. It is a flood mitigation measure as much as it is a drought management measure. So lakes today will play the role of both purposes. On one hand, to be able to mitigate the floods. If you look at the last few years, every time it rains, our cities have gone under. So Delhi had the worst floods just about a year ago, right about this time in Delhi. The water even came into the Supreme Court of Delhi. Okay. Most other cities have had devastating floods. If you remember the images of Bangalore, where the richest people of Bengaluru, instead of taking their Rolls Royce, were taking tractors and boats to reach from one place to the other. So you have a crisis of excessive water because of erratic, huge rainfall, which will grow because of climate change. You will get more rain in fewer number of rainy days. That is given. Now, in that scenario, the role of sponges, आप उसको lake कह लीजिए, pond कह लीजिए, तालाब कह लीजिए, कुछ भी कह लीजिए, it is a sponge. It is the ability to hold the water, to recharge the water for its use over longer periods of drought. Now, this is why the lakes, the traditional lakes of this country, have always been built and managed by people to make sure that they were their sources of management, of irrigation, of water supply. Now, this is where the current lake program needs to be situated. And we are looking forward to learning about what have been the successes, what has worked, what has not worked. To me, the biggest question with lake management is, how do you manage a lake, a water body, a living water body, when bureaucracies for land and water are fractured? How do you manage a living water body when the water is connected to the land at the back? When you cannot have water in a lake unless the catchment is protected. And the catchment, in most cases that I have seen, has always belonged to a different agency from the water body holding agency. Then becomes the crisis of the channels that bring the water to it. Now, in most places, I have seen the channels being encroached upon. In most cases, that water body then dries up, and we create a situation where land is more important than water, and very soon the revenue department says, ki yahan to koi, ye to wasteland tha, and let us fill up this, and then let us distribute it as part of our land distribution program. That has happened across the years, across time. So how do you protect the water body as well? What is the legal protection for that living body of water, plus its channels, plus the catchment, even if it is held by different agencies? How do you make sure, and this is something Shushmita tells me is not such a challenge in rural India, but it will be a huge challenge in urban India. How do you make sure that the sewage does not flow into the water body? How do you make sure that the water bodies don't get dumped on in plastic? That you have rejuvenated a water body, you have made it living again, but now instead of water, you're getting in sewage from the city. So how do you make sure that that does not happen? And how do you make sure, most importantly, that we are able to monitor the impact of the water body? That if you have a lake which is rejuvenated, that you can see that the recharge, it is being able to recharge the wells, that you have been able to increase the irrigation potential of that water body. Because we have to build, in some senses, a new understanding of the role of water bodies, decentralized water bodies in this country. We have not understood it yet. So the problem also is, and that's why this book is so important, is that we need to bring all governments together on this, because governments, by the very nature, have been looking at these water bodies as belonging to different departments. So the size of the water body depends, agar wo panchayat ke andar hai, वो गांव के अंदर है, थोड़ी बड़ी होगी तो वो जिला में चली जाएगी, उससे बड़ी होगी तो वो इरिगेशन डिपार्टमेंट के पास चली जाएगी. How do you make sure that there is a governance system that works for all water bodies, which may also have multiple villages around it? That was the case in many water bodies of the past. We have not been able to understand that new governance for the future. So this is why this book is so important. That's why also the work of many of you sitting in this room is so important, because you will help us to understand all these questions and understand what and how did it work. And I'm saying this to you because there is no manual. Drought relief की manual है इस देश के अंदर. That you know there is a district collector कि अगर famine होता है तो 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 करना है. To some extent, we even know कि canal irrigation के साथ क्या करना है, though we are now losing it because in Delhi you've seen that the canals that bring the water to Delhi, we are having to post CRPF along every kilometer of the canals because we are saying वो पानी चोरी हो जाएगा. So we have reached that state in this country. वो किसी manual में नहीं था कि आपको CRPF तैनात करना पड़ेगा to make sure कि आपकी पानी की चोरी नहीं होती है. I was never in any manual. But this issue of lake management is really a science, a governance that requires a very high order of understanding and implementation. So this is why when Shushmita came back and told me that her colleagues had traveled and they had actually found cases where such water bodies were rejuvenated, where work had been done, we very quickly said, let's just put this together as a compendium. Let's not even think of doing anything else. Just let's put together the good work and put it together almost like a good practice manual, so that we can then understand from it how did it work, what needs to be done. And what we are hoping now is that we will definitely follow this up with works in the states, talk to different state governments as well to see what is the work that is happening, what can be scaled up. We will also try and make some video films on it so that we can actually understand what was the work done and how was it done. It's the how that we need to understand so that we can then amplify it. Because at the end, as I said, this is now an imperative. If we do not protect the sponges of India, the water bodies of India, we will have more floods, we will have more droughts, and more than that, we will have more water insecurity, whether it is in the cities of India, whether it is in the villages of India. So from the time when we brought out Dying Wisdom in 1994 to now in 2024, I believe that the water story has evolved with one big difference: climate change. Where earlier on it was good to do, now it is an imperative. And I think that's why today's meeting is so important. So thank you again for coming. And Shushmita, the floor is yours now. Okay. So what we thought is we'll have all the people who have done this incredible work come and release the report as well. So if I may call Mr. Suresh Raj, Adarsh, Mohammed Elias, Rohit Deshmukh, Nithya, J, and G.R. Radhakrishnan. And of course, Janak, you have to be with us. Your work on water has been incredible. So we'll do it all, please. Please come. So, hero, please come. So where do you want us to stand? Because if you can push. She's here, Shushmita. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Just after this excellent speech from Dr. Sunita Narayan about the book, we welcome all the faces who have contributed to our case studies in the compendium. Now, this compendium actually talks about why we first try and start with the point why this compendium. Now, we have seen the newspaper recently where, Delhi is struggling for water. Before that, we had day zero, which is like no water almost for Bengaluru also. So the cities are reeling under water crisis during lean period. Groundwater is plunging down, lakes and ponds are dry. And the rural areas, they are also suffering the same heat during the peak summers. And we have even seen farmers and the fishermen losing their livelihood and migrating out of the rural areas. Then comes the monsoon, and the sewage mixed with rainwater flows into the lakes and the ponds. So these are the two issues. So when it is peak summer, we are feeling the heat, we are feeling the crisis of the water, and when it is raining hard, we are again underwater. So again, the lakes and the water bodies, they also have the problems of encroachment. Not only the water bodies, I would say the water that comes from the land beyond the water bodies, the catchment areas, the feeder channels, they are all encroached. So we see that the solution actually lies in the restoration of these water bodies so that they are able to recharge the groundwater. And as Madam said, that flood, both mitigating the flood as well as recharging the groundwater. So this is where we come in, and we have brought this compendium to you so that we can learn that which are the central and the state government, all is not lost. We still have some programs which are working well and bringing some success to those districts or to those cities. So some of the key faces from these programs are here to share with you the case studies. So as the day goes by, you will come and learn from them. So we are all here to discuss and learn from each other. So as we have listed in the compendium, there are series of government programs. So to start with, we have the famous NLCP, National Lake Conservation Plan. Then the NLCP got revamped. Then we had the MGNREGS, which has been extensively used for the restoration of the water bodies, and Jal Shakti Abhiyan, which has been a mandate for all this. Your slides are not still up to. Okay. So we have different programs which are actually making the which are from center and the states which are actually going for rejuvenation of water bodies. So we'll come to them one by one. So this is the map which you have in the compendium, which shows that every state, almost every state in India actually has a program, state program. And apart from that, we have 5 very important central programs also, which are looking into the rejuvenation of water bodies. We'll come to it one by one. So on the right-hand side, you can see a table which shows that how we have moved to different ecological regions and have done the survey. So we have moved to different Indo-Gangetic plain, deserts, coastal areas, Deccan plateau, and we have seen that which are the programs which are working and which are not working. Almost we have studied over 250 water bodies under 26 or 27 leg programs, both central and state, where we have said that these are the programs which are working in this district or working in this state. And we have tried to come out what works well, and if it is failing, why is it failing? So these are the points which we have tried to bring out from the case studies. So in this way, we have actually, we did some secondary research. We have interacted with the custodian of the lakes. We have interacted with the NGOs. We have interacted with the communities and tried to find out which are the best places where we can visit. And the main idea was which are the ones which are sustainable. It's not about just doing the work and forgetting. We were looking at those programs which were sustainable. It's still maintained, still monitored, and also the government had this idea of documenting the change. So in many programs, we saw that they said, okay, we have done this, but they do not have any idea whether it has brought any change, whether the irrigated area under irrigation has improved, whether the fish catches have improved, whether it has mitigated the waterlogging problem in that area, whether there was any rise in the wells or the open wells, the bore wells. So we did not find in many, but the good news is we found that many actually did it, and we were lucky enough to get connected with them and bring those case studies back. So as I told you, we have interacted with the NGOs, we have interacted with the communities, and also we have obviously interacted with the different government departments to get the data. The most fascinating part is when the government departments shared with us, they were very happy to share with us what are the impacts they were actually seeing. And we have verified that on the ground. We went to those case studies and we have verified on the ground. We again interacted with the community to see that whether they have actually got some, felt some impact, whether it's improvement of their livelihood. In many cases, we have seen that people were migrating out because the lakes were dry, the lakes were polluted, the fishes, actually there was death of fishes, but they came back after the whole water body got rejuvenated under certain programs. Now let me start with Mission Amrit Sarovar. That's the most talked about mission in the country right now, which shows that huge number of water bodies have been actually rejuvenated under them. So it was launched in 2022, and in a year it had an aim to complete at least 50,000 water bodies. It had an aim to rejuvenate 50,000, but later on 50,000 more were actually added to the list. And right now we see that out of 1.09 lakh water bodies, almost 60% of it were rejuvenated. And when we actually tried to find out which were the states which actually got the most of them, we saw that Uttar Pradesh was the state. Obviously, it's a very large state. And also we saw some states which were performing very poorly. And the reason where we saw that it was a successful scheme, the Mission Amrit Sarovar, it was when we were very happy to see that the state programs actually which were successful were brought under the Mission Amrit Sarovar and were declared Amrit Sarovars. So those successful state programs were brought under Mission Amrit Sarovar. So the main reason of success of Missions Amrit Sarovar in certain states were that the successful state programs were brought under. Then the Amrut. Amrut is strictly for the urban, and it focused on the recycle and reuse of treated sewage as well as the rejuvenation. So we will come to that connection, how some cities are actually using treated wastewater to fill in the lakes. and how they are maintaining the sustainability, how they are monitoring. We have certain faces from those places also who will be actually talking about those case studies also. And most important part is the use of geospatial tools to locate the water bodies. Right now, it started yesterday only. For 4 days, what is happening? Mahua, which is connected to Amrut, they are conducting a training program for all its nodal persons to tell them how to use the geospatial tools to locate the water bodies, because most of the water bodies are lost. People do not know whether there was any water body there. So it's very important that they find out where is the water body, where is the catchment of the feeder channel. So MOA is taking initiative to do this and capacitate its officials. So if you see the amount of money that has been spent, so you will see that cities of Kollam and Ranebannur in Karnataka, they have spent maximum amount on Amrut. This is data till July 2022 when we started the work actually, and many of them are under progress. Like Tamil Nadu is one state where many programs are actually happening under Amrut and followed by the Gujarat. So Amrut is happening, but we were happy to see some very good case studies from Puducherry, and we have Mr. Suresh Raj coming from there, who will actually tell you about the story, how they have renovated a traditional water body, and very interesting story, which we have also documented in the compendium. We have this RRR project, which everyone knows, which is also again talking about reviving the water bodies. So we have found many of them. We have from Andhra Pradesh, some of the very good case studies coming this from Andhra Pradesh about RRR. And we have seen that many of the successful RRR programs have been again converted into Mission Amrit Sarovar. So we see the list where you see a photograph which we have documented also. So this is a drought-prone Prakasam district of Andhra Pradesh, which totally lost its storage capacity, but it came back to life under the RRR scheme. So we have the total expenditure also 511.23 crores, and also on the left-hand side you see the different states which have spent on, which have done work on between 16 to 21 on RRR. Now we come to the state program. So we have covered the central programs, which are doing very well, starting from Mission Amrit Sarovar, Amrut in some places, Mission Amrit Sarovar covering the state programs, then the RRR coming in. So in the districts where we have traveled, we have seen that we are successful. Now we come to the state programs, where we start with Delhi, our own Delhi. Delhi has developed this project called City of Lakes. In City of Lakes, what they are doing, initially what used to happen is that the treated water from the STPs got mixed with the untreated water in the nalas and the drains. So once treated, it again got mixed, and again it was carried further and again got treated. So unnecessary usage of cost of energy, the expenditure was high, but we were not getting treated water. So Delhi actually found out a project where they were using treated water to fill up some of the artificial lakes. So they had series of lakes, which you can see at the bottom, where they have actually developed series of lakes to fill it with treated wastewater. And these are the areas which were actually struggling due to plunging of groundwater. And the piezometer data actually shows that there has been a rise. So if you see the table at the top, you will see what was the rise like. And the birds came in, and in the compendium, we will find different names of the bird species. because I'm not an expert on the birds. So you will find a huge number of bird species also coming back. Then we have this famous Mukhyamantri Jal Savarnayan Abhiyan, which actually started and then it got ended in 2019, but the state is again gearing up because it has got a very good impact. The water body got rejuvenated, and if you see the cover page of the compendium, it's also from NJC. My colleague actually traveled, and it was from the Barmer district, the dry desert district of Rajasthan, where the whole talab, they call it talab, got rejuvenated. And people were actually depending on it for drinking. There was improvement of biodiversity, and people who were actually migrating out, they came back because they actually got back their life. Then we have several programs from Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu, according to us, actually is at the top because several districts of Tamil Nadu had successful programs. Like we have AGMT2, which because AGMT, which which was actually launched in sometimes back and ended in 2011, it was again relaunched because it got a very good rise in groundwater. So they were desilting the water bodies, creating new water bodies under them. And if you see the amount of work that have been done is huge. And this is the district which we have traveled is Tiruvallur. So here also the success points actually is the increase in the groundwater level. And although we have studied the rural areas, we saw that after every heavy shower, the rural areas, the roads got waterlogged. And people were actually suffering due to mosquito breeding, and they were actually spending huge amount of money for that. So what happened? It actually solved that waterlogging problem even in the rural areas. And the best part of it that they were documenting, and it's mandate to document the impact. So which was very important because data actually is very important to understand whether there has been any impact or not. And obviously the village communities were involved. So we have another scheme. We have when we actually talking about Kudi Maramathu scheme. So I'm not going into details, but it also had a very good impact on the because it had a political will. It was started by the then chief minister of the state, and it had a very good smooth flow of fund. And the impact was that the irrigation, the areas under irrigation was increased, fishing was increased, and also they have secured money for the maintenance. So only restoration was not the end of it. Then we go to other programs like Nillai Niravalam, where the same process was followed. There was improvement of groundwater. There was connection with the communities, secured funds for restoration, and the most interesting part is the CSR and the NGO funds were also roped in because they were also convinced about the fact that we need to save our water bodies, and the birds also came in, and also the irrigation, the area under irrigation increased more than 70%. So on the same line, Urkudi Urani Kappam was actually planned. It also it was a very short, focused campaign, and it had a very strong political will. And it is also very well appreciated because of its the sustainability. So we have other series of programs, TNI, MP, as I told you. Tamil Nadu is actually topping the list because it always thought of engaging the communities, it always thought of the impact, documenting the impact, and also the sustainability of the project. So we have Adarsh, Mr. Adarsh talking about Namni, so I'm not going into it, but it also succeeded because there was the main focus was the sustainability of the source and the political will. And they had also a good amount of money for the maintenance. And how they are maintaining, we can directly learn from Mr. Adarsh. Then we have Mr. Rohit actually talking about the Galmukh Dharan Galyuk Shivar, which he had worked with the government on the desiltation of series of ponds. And here also, if you see, the initiative was that it connected the communities and also the farmers who were the main actually beneficiary of the project was actually connected from the very beginning. So you have this Khanapura village tank in Nanded district. Actually, Mr. Rohit can tell you more about this, where we found an excellent case study. Here also you have improvement in the groundwater and also the irrigated area improved. And also the Amrut Nagarathana from the Bangalore, urban Bangalore is another case study where treated wastewater is used to fill the water bodies. And we have Ms. Nitya over here who will actually talk about how it improved the livelihood of the fishermen, how the lakes that have been rejuvenated improve the flora and fauna of the area. So when we actually tried to compile all the success points, we saw, next, if you go to the next one. Next one. Next.
You can do it.
So if you go to the next slide, if you see, we were trying to get together what are the points which helped in the success. So we saw that a strong political will was very important, and also the technical and expertise, actually the capacity of the officials looking into it is very important, and connecting with the communities, how the farmers are involved, how the fishermen were involved, how people who were the beneficiaries were involved, and also a assured flow, not only for the restoration, but also for the sustainability. So when we were talking about the way forward, we actually thought that what can we learn from all these instances? So as we have seen, mostly in cities, lakes and water bodies in most cases are receptacle of the sewage. So it is very important that we make some solutions so that the wastewater is not entering into the water bodies, and we have to track the fecal sludge is not entering into the water body at all. We have this Amrut 2.0, which actually talks about the recycling and reusing of wastewater and rejuvenation of water bodies. And how this connection can be made by states is very important. So we have the central allocation between 2021 to 2022 and 2025 to 2026 as 66,000, more than 66,000 crores. And it's very important for the states actually to look into how they will stop the fecal sludge from entering into the water bodies or the wastewater entering into the water bodies. And another point in Amrut is the shallow aquifer management project, which is also important to sort out the urban flooding mitigation, solve the urban flooding problem. It's also a key point in Amrut. So Amrut 2.0 can be effectively used for the cities. And for the maintenance, we have seen in many cases that people have used the MGNREGS fund and the 15th Finance Commission fund, which are with the Gram Panchayat. So we have enough fund in 24-25, almost 49,800 crores has been released to the rural local bodies under FFC. So can that be used effectively for the maintenance and sustainability? And MGNREGS fund, also if you see, a huge amount of money has been allocated. So it's now how the government is using this money. Provisions are there. We have to learn from these case studies how we can use these funds effectively. So with that, I end my talk over here. Thank you. Thank you, Shashmita. So we have a few minutes. Let's open it up for questions, issues, discussion, and then we can go into tea break and then start the sessions. Anything anyone would like to raise at this stage? Yes, madam. Yes. नहीं, I think ये लोग record कर रहे हैं. They're also, this is being live streamed as well. So,
yeah, I'm from Hyderabad. I'm Madhurika Chaudhary. I'm working on Deccan for and I get an opportunity earlier also to it's really good. Ma'am, my actually basic question is because I'm restoring lakes from quite a long time, it's 8 years or 10 years now. In those situations, how can I actually, I'm a private entity, but yes, definitely I'm working with GTMC and HMDA. So in Amrut 2.0, how I can be a part of that, how I can enroll that, I'm searching on the website, but I'm not getting actually.
Yeah, we are not going to be the right people to answer that, but what we can do is that as this, I mean, this is the first part of our work. This compendium is the beginning of work that we will do. And I'm hoping now with this, Shushmita can plan on certain meetings more at the state level. And maybe that will help us to bring state officials and state NGOs together and civil society together to see what more can be done. And at that time, maybe that's an opportunity where these issues can be further discussed.
One more question.
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so ma'am, in the Telangana actually, because it's a new state, right? So I actually faced quite a different kind of the conditions. But yes, ma'am, the biggest problem which I'm facing is again, when we talk about the lake restoration, is the protection first and then the restoration kind of thing. So we have state wetland authority just now from 2024 only in the Telangana. Earlier, the state wetland authority was totally not working with them. Maybe in the future. So we do not have any kind of a lake act we can propose to the government. So that very good point.
Excellent point. I think what we would like to do is to understand now before we jump into this, because clearly protection, I told you one of the big challenges for any water body today is protection. But it's not protection only of the water body, it's also protection of the catchment. I mean, Hyderabad is a city where your airport has come on the catchment of your biggest lake. Okay. The most ironical thing that I've ever heard is when I heard that the groundwater board in Kerala built its office on a water body. Now, I'm not blaming anybody. It's the fact is these things are not protected. There is no legal protection. In Delhi today, I know that even in the master plan, the water body is not recorded. Okay. In most cities, most villages, it is a little better because in the village record, it is often a recorded water body. But in cities, it is certainly not recorded and certainly not the catchment. So the question will also become, how do you protect? And I think that should be something we should understand better before we propose an act. Let's also understand what has worked. Assam, Sushmita had, Guwahati has an act. Srinagar, we know, has an act for Dal and even a lake management authority, which actually even controls the catchment to some extent. So I think we need to understand the best practices and all this before we jump. And definitely it's an area where we will continue to work and learn and work with all of you to see how do we grow this understanding.
Because now, especially when we're talking about the urban, yeah, it has become more dangerous area. I mean, again, obviously, it's in the rural also. It is when talk about the land versus water. So the price of the land in the rural is too high that actually the people are not at all concerned. And we talk that we always call that lake is a living entity. It is very much needed that we need a criminal act to actually make it more.
No, let us think through it.
Thank you,
Dr. Sen Gupta.
Thank you, madam. I'd like to know what is the CAC's plan, because we know that in our country, only 35 to 40% of sewage is treated. All the untreated sewage or partially treated sewage are going to the water bodies, including lakes and ponds. So unless we treat at least 75 to 80% of our sewage, we're not going to improve the condition of the lakes, number one. Number 2 points is a lot of non-point sources of pollution, like in agriculture waste, that pesticides, etc., are also going to the water bodies, including lakes. So how to prevent that? And third point is that the partially treated industrial waste are also being dumped in the lakes. There is an example in the Telangana and Bangalore and Karnataka, etc., where the industries find a very easy way to dump this partially treated industrial waste also to the lakes. It is the failure of the pollution control board, but it's still there. So with these three important things, how we can save our lakes and ponds and the water bodies from this type of pollution. Thank you, madam.
Very good point, Dr. Sengupta. And I think this is where our lakes work comes together with the work that CSC has been doing for the last some years on fecal sludge management. As you know, we have been promoting the idea that instead of managing our sewage through the conventional way of underground sewerage, we need to make sure that we can do fecal sludge management in which you are really intercepting the sewage from households, which is already being done through tankers, and bring it from tankers to treatment zones. The state of Odisha, for instance, has completely, and I hope that even with the new government, that this policy will not be changed. Odisha state has decided to go 100% non-sewage sanitation, which means that it can be much faster, treatment is quicker, and you use the recycled water back into agriculture or for recharge. So I think there's a reinvention of the sewage system that is going to be required for the protection, particularly of urban lakes. Rural lakes, sewage is not the issue, encroachment is the issue. The management of the catchment and the lake is the issue. But in urban, yes, sewage is as much an issue as encroachment is. And I think fecal sludge, reinventing the sewage system comes together with the protection of lakes from this point of view. Odisha, UP state has now decided the entire to do non-sewage sanitation. So across UP, it is now cities are doing non-sewage sanitation. So I think there are two things that need to come together. You won't be able to protect lakes unless you manage your sewage. And I think particularly for urban India, both will be needed. Okay. And of course, industrial sewage, so you know, Dr. Sengupta, you've been member secretary of the pollution control boards. We really need to get that act together as far as industrial sewage is concerned, so that you make sure that sewage is, that industrial waste is not dumped. I mean, the kind of scenes you get from Bangalore are clearly unacceptable, but that's part of the enforcement challenge we have. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we can break for tea and then we can come back to the session. So thank you, Shushmita. Thank you, everyone. And we will come back in 15 minutes after tea break. Thank you. He is outside. Thank you.